I'd like to welcome you all to a special presentation. This is a part of our self-empowering series, and our topic today is being present for your own life. Now, what does that mean? It means that more often than not, the average person is very diligent, very conscientious about trying to do the things that establish some sense of identity, some order, some boundaries, some appropriate thoughts and actions, trying to fit in with the conditioned responses they have been led to believe will allow them to be acceptable. And why not? We all want to be acceptable. I mean, rather to be acceptable and appreciated for what we are than to be challenged constantly because we're not living up to someone else's expectation of who they think we should be. But along the way of life, going through all the different transitions and passages and crises, we're more often than not even present for the test that we're given. Fear, uncertainty, insecurity can block our awareness that we've been given a test. More often than not, when we are thrown a curve in life, we respond first by a sense of helplessness, a sense of acute anxiety. We don't know how to handle all those balls going into the air. We're afraid of dropping them. There comes a point in life where we simply have to step back and let everything fall. Let everything in our life simply cease to be significant in a moment. What happens when you do that? You then become aware in that moment that you have a moment. All the time I'm speaking with people who are unaware of what moment in life they're in. Recently I attended a reunion. At that reunion, people talked about, gee, where has time gone? Well, the reality is everyone has the same identical time. No one has faster or slower time. Then why does it seem when we're busy, time goes quickly? When we have nothing to do, it goes slower. Why is it there are times in our life where we don't want to be burdened except by being more in the moment and relaxed? My generation, the baby boomers, have mastered the art of hyper speed. We're overly fast at everything. We want everything instantly, not just fast foods, not just quick read books. We want to take classics and boil them down to just the kind of the essence of it. We are the headline generation. Unfortunately, the patience, determination to understand life is frequently lost in the process. You have to go deeper than that to find the substance. When you wake up every day and all you have that day is a series of schedules to which you're going to be as diligent as possible, do as much as possible, and as capably as possible, but minus the hassle factor. You're not going to do anything that's going to make you feel so uncomfortable that it burdens the quality of your consciousness. So what isn't done? For a lot of people, thinking about the consequences of their work upon others. The reality of what they've said and how it might impact upon another human being. Were they gracious or humble? Were they supportive? Or were they sharp and caustic and critical, sarcastic, demeaning? It depends upon how a person's feeling about themselves, because how you feel about yourself will directly impact upon how you feel about others. If you don't feel good about yourself, you're certainly not going to feel good about others. You'll frequently view anyone else who does feel good about themselves as a threat. Now, there's not a threat. One person's happiness should not in any way undermine our happiness, but we're overly competitive, even in the area of being charitable about respecting other people and supporting other people's successes. When you look at this generation, not that it's unique or exclusive, but one of the things you notice is that we don't spend a whole lot of time looking at the consequences of our actions. We have 7 million children taking medication each day. That didn't happen in my parents' generation, nor with our children. But our children's children, it certainly is common. I remember when I came home from school, there was someone at home. I remember having dinner with my family. I remember every single weekend after church, we had to sit and have a meal together. And whatever we discussed, it was a place that we discussed it. Now, in retrospect, there's times when you don't want to be eating and talking about anxious or problematic things. But because we dealt with problems on a daily basis, they didn't grow into something beyond a daily problem. They were kept in perspective. More often than not, because we took the time to deal with things as they were happening, there was not an accumulation, a psychic accumulation and emotional accumulation. There was a sense of responsibility. In my high school of 5,000 students, Parkersburg High School, if you decided you didn't like a teacher and you went up and slugged them, smacked them, I can assure you, you would have been dealt with immediately. There wouldn't have been a board saying, "The child, what are you doing? You can't touch this child. This child has a right to express themselves." Well, yes, but not in any violence, not with a lack of respect for the teacher. Now, all of us, all 5,000 of us, went through school, liked some, disliked some, favored teachers, unfavored teachers, but we all had something in common. That school was also a proving ground for developing our character, our sense of social responsibility. If someone threw something on the ground, I can promise you someone else say, "Pick it up. It doesn't belong there." If you got on a bus, and I distinctly remember this, and if you were a senior citizen, immediately, you're pregnant, immediately someone gave you their seat. And yet, go on a subway today and watch a pregnant woman or senior citizen with no one thinking about giving them a seat. Watch people throw things on the streets of New York City without any concern because no one's going to say to them anything. Look at the percentage of teachers that are assaulted, violently assaulted, and yet nothing happens to that student. I even remember teaching at a college in New York City where two students, two women, sat outside the class, smoked, drank, and defied the school and defied every class by proving that they could go through college and graduate without ever attending a class. And they did it. They succeeded. I left because of that. I was told that I would have to pass them. I said, I will not pass them. It's disrespectful to all the students who are in that class studying, doing their homework, asking questions, and actually caring about what they're learning. Now, two students are saying, because we feel we can defy the system, because you'll be afraid of us. And sure enough, everyone was. So when I put a fail mark, and I went out and I talked with the students, I said, can I help you? Do you want tutoring? No, we don't want anything. And their point was, and they were very clear in it, we have power, you don't. And they were right. Everyone acquiesced. The day that I was told I would have to pass a student who never attended a class in the New York City system, I left. I would not do that. I could not compromise my character or principles. The system is now utterly corrupted at every level. It's no different than putting a vending machine from a fast food company into a school and wondering why you have kids bouncing off the walls from having sugar overload. The schools get money, they don't care about the consequences to the kid. Putting fast foods into a hospital and wondering why people are dying of malnutrition in hospitals. Where's the surprise? Allowing no sense of character development and moral development within a family structure, and society supporting it so that people can treat each other with dignity and respect. Even if you disagree with them with respect. You don't have to attack a person to challenge their ideas. Mine was the last generation, and possibly forever, that stood up for some principles that simply do not exist today. Today, we bend over backwards to apologize for people's conscious acts of emotional or physical violence against their neighbors and friends. And then we wonder why our society is so fractured, why we have so many crimes, why we have so much fear. Where's the mystery? Take away character, take away moral values, and you have a vacuum into which people have no sense of responsibility for the actions they take. Well, if you have no sense of connection, if you are virtually disconnected, unattached to the outcome of anything you say or do, then you can say and do anything to anyone because you know that there'll be an awful lot of people apologizing for you. Now, who apologizes for these? Who apologizes for the person that smokes for 20 years and gets lung cancer and says it's not their fault? Who apologizes for the people who decide it's better to smack a teacher, beat a teacher, throw objects at a teacher than to communicate with a teacher? Who is it that believes that all you have to do in America is throw money at a problem or label it and suddenly that clarifies it? Who are the people who say that it's not your fault you're fat? Really? Well, how did you get fat? Wake up one morning and say, my God, I've been bitten by the fat bug. How did this happen? We're terrified of suggesting that, friend, don't sublimate, self-actualize. Look at your crisis as an opportunity to change. We'll apologize and put them in a counseling program. We'll put them in drug addiction program. And what kind of failure rate do we have? Astronomical. We keep approaching the problems in America from the wrong point of view. We seem to think that cancer is due to a deficiency of chemotherapy. Heart disease from bypass surgery. We just can't get it right. Now, we're not stupid. We're very smart. So instead of looking at society and all of its ills, instead of looking at our systems and being confounded by the problems, let's start our journey of self. Because as individuals, if we can learn some lessons and change ourselves, then everything else we were connected to, we can see whether it's an authentic connection that is constructive or whether it's not authentic and it's destructive, and to what degree. You can't see that until you slow down long enough to look for it. How many times have people done cleaning for you and then you went back and saw that they didn't really clean? And then you think, look, there's all this dirt here. Why didn't they see it? Because they weren't looking for it. They were just looking to get through with it. They weren't even conscious. They weren't in the moment. They weren't present. So let us be present for our own life. And the only way you can be present is, first, you must, for a moment, stop constantly looking over your shoulder to see whether or not you're doing it right. Because everything you keep referring to from your past could be misaligned. Your beliefs, your values could be wrong. And if any of that's wrong, then everything you're going to do right in this moment will be wrong. And then you'll feel this sense of, why me, when it happens? Well, why not you, if all you're doing is repeating patterns of behavior that weren't constructive to begin with? But when we started this, we were so young we couldn't either intellectually or viscerally understand that they were wrong. We just did them because there was reward if we did and punishment if we didn't. Even today, do it right, even if it's wrong morally, and you'll get rewarded. Do it. You have to do it by what someone says. But if you challenge it, then you're considered wrong, and you're punished. How many physicians today have been reprimanded or reviewed or threatened because they were seeking to help patients using alternative methods? They actually succeeded in curing patients or improving patients that before they had not, and yet their reward was to be challenged and punished. And then let the same physician injure or kill their patients but do it in an orthodox model, and they're rewarded for it. Now, it's a bit confusing, isn't it? It's as if the whole world's upside down. Well, we're part of that world. It means we're upside down. So we have to reverse that. I'm going to raise some questions here, and with each question that I raise, it's meant to allow you to think. Take off on it. Spend time with it. Any one of these thoughts you could spend at least an hour just focusing on. I'll give you a bunch, and then you take quiet meditative moments to see what you want to do with it. First, what is the significance of experiences? We all have experiences, but there's a significance to them. Now, they don't all have to be life-challenging, but every single experience we have, there is a message behind it. It can be something as simple as trying to go into a different restaurant and have a different type of food. Going down to a market that you've never shopped at before and buying something you haven't bought and then trying to work with it. It could be trying to read a different kind of book than you've read before. It could be changing the patterns throughout a day. It could be opening yourself to new friendships, trying to see if there might be people of different backgrounds, different ages, different genders that you could associate with that you hadn't up to this point. And there's something wonderful that happens when we start making new connections that feel right. There's a fit between what that person is and what they represent and what you need. But you have to break a pattern to do that, because frequently people think, well, all I need is one friend or two friends. Well, how do you know the friends you have are your friends? Have you tested them? No. What have you tested? How often do we fear being tested or testing anything because we don't want to know the outcome? We don't know if there's going to be truth, honor, and character there, or whether there's going to be excuses, weakness, and you won't know that until you're put into a situation or you put someone else in a situation and then determine that. I remember once I intentionally had a friend who was a friend of many other people I know say that they were going through a rough time. Could they borrow some money? And no one just said yes. And then I said, are those people your friends? You shouldn't have to beg from a friend to be given a loan. And if they're a real friend, they would ask whether or not before you came to them if they could help you. A real friend is there whether you're going through a thick or a thin part of life. They're there at the bottom, not just the top. So when people don't want to take a call or, well, I'm not sure, they're not friends. No. It's easy to say you're a friend when there's no challenge. It's a different story when there's a hard time. Imagine the people who would still be friends with the McMartins, the family accused of child molestation, falsely accused, I might mention, but the whole media had them guilty. The American public had them guilty. And as they said in one of the interviews, their friends had them guilty. Well, in the end, they weren't guilty. Wonder if any of those people ever stopped for a moment and said, gee, innocent people and everybody abandoned them. That shows a lack of character, not in the McMartins, in the other people. So then what you do, you learn someone else's lesson because they couldn't learn that they were cowards, not friends, that they were false. So you learn from them. You can learn from everyone else's weakness, even if that person doesn't learn from their weakness. You can learn if they're dishonest about the significance of dishonesty. So if it's in you on any level, you can bring it up, you can examine it, you can see how you're using dishonesty, and you can surrender it. Think of the people who don't have experiences because they're afraid of the consequence of the experience. Now, what are we afraid of? Especially experiences that could really only help us, like exercising and eating right and thinking right, meditation, seeing the world, introducing ourselves to other cultures and people and values. What in the world could possibly be threatening about that? Several things. First, it goes against what we were told were the certainties, absolute certainties of a bounded existence. Now, the trouble with a bounded existence is this. If you're told what to believe, how to live, and that everything you'll ever have a question about will be answered inside this very limited perspective, then imagine what happens when one day you wake up and you're in a crisis and yet the tools you were given don't work. You feel disempowered. You feel anxious. It's only at the point of acute anxiety that people start making really foolish judgments. That's when we start doing self-destructive things. Gambling, overeating, drugs, overworking, over-responsibility, hiding, denying, going a mile a minute. Anything to keep from feeling. So in effect, we put life in distraction mode. As long as we're distracted, including relationships, one of the best ways in the world to distract yourself, a relationship. Not that relationships are bad, they're not. But if the reason you're doing a relationship is to distract yourself, then it's not a good relationship. Anything that distracts you keeps you from focusing upon the issue. And then we become chronic procrastinators. We work around problems, but never face them. You got to face a problem for what it is if you want to change it. You have to look it right in the eye and not blink and realize there's nothing there to be afraid of, because in the end, there's nothing there. It's all an illusion. Most of life is an illusion. Success is an illusion. How is someone successful? The only way anyone in America is successful is convincing you that they have something that you need. Right? Designer clothes, or a movie, or a book, or a car, or a place to live. And then you seek those people out. And if they're promoted well enough, then one day we don't ask whether or not we really needed it or whether it was really better. We just assume because everyone else is in this line, and so we get in line. Everybody's in line to a restaurant, but no one asks whether the food is good. The assumption is it is. And then we go into a defense mechanism that if everyone else, including ourselves, has accepted something, then we better defend what we've accepted. Then our ego comes up and we have to defend the merits of something even if it's not in our best interest to do so. Think of how many times we've done something, spent money on something, had someone in our life just because it was considered the right thing to do. Right by whose terms? The people who created the box that you've been placed in. And then one day, because you are a woman, or you're black, or you're Latino, or you're married, or you're divorced with children, or you're a senior citizen, or you're rich, or you're poor, or you're middle class, or you live in the East Coast or West Coast, Mid-America, or any one of a million different differentiations that we have, you no longer have any idea of who in the heck you are. You're simply a consumer. After all, isn't that what we're called? Consumer index, consumers. Now, consumers do what? They consume, which means they do what? Buy. Now, people who consume buy are economic what? Indicators, yes. Well, there's another word not quite as polite. Slaves. Because we absolutely only feel that we're somebody if we have something that proves it. Because if you don't have a degree and someone else does, then you're not considered as smart as the person has the degree. If you're not accomplished in something, because you always hear about the accomplished pianist, right? You don't hear about the unaccomplished pianist. Who wants to go hear an unaccomplished pianist? We have a nobody unaccomplished pianist. You want to come and hear them? We have an absolutely nobody singer who's not mastered anything in their voice. Come and no. So then our hyperbolization extends to people. How many times have you heard someone is beautiful, the most beautiful man in the world? Beautiful woman in the world. People magazine. No, you get 6 very horny, frustrated, completely lonely, dysfunctional people sitting around a table saying, I like that star. I agree. And 6 people decide who's the handsomest. Isn't it stupid? And people go, oh yeah, Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt? I don't think so. Right? But then now that gives us an impression that he's a somebody. So in our minds, we elevate him to the most handsome. Or we go see someone in a movie because they've had another movie that's been successful. And we always want to follow who's been successful at something. Someone writes a book successful, we want to go buy the next book. So then it breeds this contempt for anything that's not successful. Nobody wants to go to a mediocre doctor, right? You never hear something, what can I tell you? He's a nobody doctor, charges moderate prices. He's on 42nd Street. No, it's my doctor. He's a genius beyond super. There's a title, and they haven't even thought of it yet that he has. He's on a floor that hasn't even been built. He's up that high. And he charges who knows how much. I can't even afford to go to him. But everyone who does this, he's the best. Isn't that the way? They talk about their doctors. How do you feel? Don't feel good at all. He cheated you. Yes, cost me a fortune. You can't imagine. People, and then going back. Of course I'm going to go back to him. Who do you want me to go back to? A nobody? Go watch a film by nobody actors from a nobody director, nobody writer, and nobody plot, and nobody publicized it. No one's going to see it, right? Harvard is supposed to be better than Kentucky State. Why? It's not. It's an illusion. In the end, it's an illusion. Because the federal government has standards that in order to get a degree, you have to pass certain standards. So everyone who gets a degree has to pass certain standards from these Ivy League schools. But we've made Ivy League synonymous with what? A standard, right? Well, the majority of people convicted of crimes of Watergate were Ivy League people. So we now say the schools that promote criminality. Be a sex slave to Bubba. Go to Harvard. No. But think of how many times you've done something because of the image that you had about it, right? Las Vegas doesn't look good either. Siegfried and Roy and all their tigers. None of that stuff looks good. Wayne Newton's hair up to here, out to here, down to there. I don't care if he can sing Don Quixote in Latin. Doesn't all of Las Vegas is just pure tackiness. A volcano is not a volcano. New York City is not New York City. The Eiffel Tower is not the Eiffel Tower. But they pretend it is so they can lose their money and watch stupid shows. Everywhere you look, someone's trying to create an idea that you're not enough. Good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, happy enough, strong enough, healthy enough, intelligent enough, successful enough on your own. Only by being with them, giving to them. They have to create the illusion and then sell it to you. Then you have to buy into it. And once you buy into it, now you're committed. Now they got you. How do you think we end up spending more money than what we make, and we end up with credit card debt higher than it's ever been? Do we really need everything that we buy? No, we don't, do we? But we think we do. There's some urge. There's something that goes into our pocket to get that credit card. Put it down. I need this. What if there was some kind of behavioralist there that says, why are you buying this? The checkout counter. You already have a pair of jeans. You don't need another pair of jeans. Now think before you buy it. That should be at the Gap, right? Well, you're right. I mean, I do have 3 pair of jeans. Well, so what's another one? Well, I just felt like buying it. Why? How are you going to pay for it? Wouldn't it be great if there was someone to talk us out of every sale? Right? And even on the road. Why are you talking on the cell phone and driving? Is that call so important? No. It's not. But there's no one there to tell us that. There's no one there to help us not make these choices. And when we feel out of control in our own life, we'll make choices to temporarily, in little tiny minute ways, alter our perception. So we want to get a clear perception. Even if what we end up seeing through a clear eye is an ugly picture. I'd rather see an ugly picture that's honest than a so-called diffused picture that is deceptive. The significance of experiences is that every experience can be a lesson. A good lesson, a bad lesson, a positive, a painful, a happy, joyful, angry. Whatever we ultimately want to do with the experience, at least it can teach us something. And in life, it's ultimately how many times we've made the same mistake that ends up being the problem, the accumulation of mistakes. If we only made a mistake once in a given area and learned from it and didn't have to make it again, Wow, how much better would that be? But we're serial repeaters. We make all these mistakes over and over again, right? Yes. So what we have to do is look at the experience and say, what experience do I want to choose today to bring into my life that can allow me to be more present for my life, and then let me judge that experience afterwards. That way you can say, well, I liked it, I didn't like it, but at least I didn't stop myself from it. And what's stopping you is not you, it's all of your conditioned responses that you shouldn't even have that experience. So now, whatever you've done, be present in the moment and judge it in the moment. And judge it for what it is, not for what you thought it would be or told it would be. That's how we break down racial barriers. Talk with someone from another race and be present for that conversation and let it be what it is. If you don't, then you'll always have that assumption that somehow you shouldn't be in that conversation, shouldn't be traveling to that place, shouldn't be eating that food, shouldn't be engaging in that activity. We edit our whole lives and end up with bits and pieces of fragments and try to make them whole experiences. They're not. Rarely does people have a whole experience. A whole experience when you're present, you created it, you own it, you do it, and then you accept or reject it, but only because of what it means to you. And when you're right in this moment, you're going to judge it differently than if you're prejudging something based upon biases and prejudices. What is awakened awareness? Awakened awareness is that in the moment I'm in right now, I don't need anything from my past to be aware that I am thinking, breathing, I am in front of someone, I'm doing something, and just be centered. It's like a living meditation, so that every moment of every day, you're capturing it. Nothing's getting away. It's like being a radar that scans all people, all things. If you walk through a garden, you're present in the garden. You see the butterflies, you hear the hummingbird, you see the bees, you see the things that are crawling, you can smell the aromas because you're present for it. You're awakening yourself. It's like your mind opens up and this wonderful rose comes out. That's what it means to be awakening. Right now, many of us are not awake. We're asleep. We're in this stupor. Why? Because it's comfortable. We don't want to go through the pain of awakening because all of our illusions will be re-examined. When you're awakened, you don't want to live by illusions or metaphors. Reality is far richer than any metaphor. So you're going to judge things by being awake and present for them. The moment you reach back to the past, you're not awakened in the moment. Look at life non-judgmentally. How can you do that? Be present for it. Otherwise, everything you're going to be judging. Rest, repair, and visualize before your journey. We don't give ourselves an opportunity to start life correctly. When you go out to do a race, you never see people just jump out of a car, go over and run. You see them stretching, you see them relaxing, you see them getting into emotion. You see them getting their mind where they're going to go. Before I run a race, I visualize the entire race. I visualize how I want to do it, how I'm going to feel. Then when I'm in the race, I'm simply connecting the energy. So I'm present for that energy in that moment. I'm not thinking of anything else. My mind's not distracted. It's like a laser. I'm focused. But before that, I had to be rested. I couldn't go in with all kinds of thoughts. That's why you have to separate out what's real now from all the thoughts you can't control. And what you can't control is what clutters your mind. What you keep bringing in the mind is not what you've done that you enjoy. It's what you can't control, what isn't working, what is troubling you, what is challenging you. That's what keeps going over and over and over again, because that's the only place you have some control over is the outcome you give it in your mind, either excuses, justification, defensing, but none of that is positive. So when you don't have to do that, you're just resting, you're relaxing. Then you start your journey. Visualize what you want. By visualizing what you want, you have an opportunity to get it. If you can't visualize something, how in the world are you ever going to achieve it? We wake up in a day and we just get into a day. We're so overly focused on just getting into the rituals and routine of a day, we don't visualize the greater importance of the day. That this is a 24-hour period we can never live again. So what can we do in this 24 hours that's different, that's unique, that's empowering, that's fulfilling? We can visualize what we want. Every single dinner I make is different. I refuse to eat the same dinner that I would prepare twice. Even the health drinks I make, I do something different. Yeah, it'll throw in a different fruit, or I'll make it in a different way, or I'll make a rice milk or a soy milk. I'll do something that makes it different. Why? Because I'm going to keep challenging myself, because only in a challenged mind do we grow. There's an enormous amount of science shows that enriching your environment, by enriching the challenges that we're faced with, we grow. You start getting old mentally when you no longer look for the enrichment of a challenged environment. Therefore, everything that challenges you enriches you. But if you take it easy and you just try to do work or relationship that is comfortable, you're in a circle that gravitates down. And then one day, you've gone from enrichment to boredom, to tediousness, to indifference. And then's when you become apathetic and depressed. Why do we find it so hard to understand where we're depressed? Depression comes from what we can't control. And we go through moods. You never have someone just get depressed. There's frequently anger, or rage, or resentment. And when nothing happens that changes anything, then a resignation, then apathy, then depression. A sense of hopelessness and helplessness. Well, where's the constructive challenge in there? There's not. Every day of our lives, we should look for the constructive challenge. Recently, someone was doing an interview on me, and they were at my home in Florida, and they said, "Gary, why are you doing all this stuff?" I said, "Because it's a constructive challenge. Right now, you see sand, and you see almost jungle. I see a garden with swans in a pond." And they look and they say, "Well, there's nothing there." Not today. I had to visualize it before I can create it. But I'm not afraid to visualize. Why? Because I'm not doing it because I want other people's acceptance or I'm trying to prove anything. I'm doing it because it's a part of the way I challenge myself to keep my life going forward in a constructive way. Now, dynamic energies do that. Each energy chooses different ways to express themselves. Dynamics like to create. We don't create for ego. We don't create because we make money from it. We create because there's a vitalness. There's a vital vibration in the energy that you have the power to create. Don't waste the power. Utilize it. And then suddenly one day people come and go, "Wow." I just had people today call me about an hour ago, and they said, "We just came by and your caretaker let us look at the property, and wow, you've got some really unusual ways you've done gardens and all this. We didn't know it was possible." Well, it's because no one else did it. Everybody else said, "Well, you're a landscape architect, you just go make me something." Or you're a designer. No, I don't do that. I don't believe people should do that. I believe you should be the architect of your life and the architect of everything around you. There was a time when people were more independent and weren't afraid of being more creative. And so many people are just very sterile. Are they inherently sterile? No. No one I know is inherently sterile. They just act that way when they're afraid of the consequences of being in charge of their own life. So you're either transcending your problems by creating solutions, or you're adapting to your problems by accepting that there's a limitation on how you can think and live and be. Now, either way, you're right. You're right and rewarded if you transcend with a healthy challenge, and you're right if you adapt and just go in a circular motion down. There's a reward for both: disease, depression, anxiety, anger, disillusionment, and detachment. Health, vitality, happiness, excitement, and the pleasure of being. What a difference in the extremes, both coming from the same person. Two different paradigms. Were you conditioned and taught to adapt? Were you conditioned and taught to transcend? Were you given, as a sponsorship of your life, free will to make these choices? Or were you threatened that if you step out of line, that you'll be punished? These can have powerful influences on how we go with our lives. Even if we want to do something different, if we don't have the courage to and self-actualize, then we just get even more depressed. You may have been on your quest for such a long time that you're no longer clear of where and why you're going there. Especially people who just haven't connected with what they thought they should have at that time in their life. Part of them has this false sense of ego entitlement. Well, I've worked here for so long, or I've been around so long, or I've done this. If I've done all this, shouldn't I be more than what I am? No. That's a false way of judging yourself and a harsh way of judging yourself. No one has a right to say that at this time in your life you should be anywhere. And the mere fear that we should achieve more for where we're at, or somehow we had something at one time, and that's a big problem today. People had something they thought was important because of economic insecurities and whatnot. They've lost it, and now they're trying to reclaim it. That's the worst thing you can do. That's the provings. Provings are the fool's errand. Provings mean that without proving something, you really don't feel confident in yourself. And only by proving yourself will you feel good about yourself, because you're looking for you to prove what other people have denied, that you can do something. Therefore, you're doing things for other people, not for yourself. You should never live through other people's approval of you, whether it's the size of your house, or the style of your clothes, or money in the bank, or anything else. Then you're not a whole human being of free will. You're merely a puppet of someone else's expectations. So when we look at this issue of our quest, and we're not sure where we're going, well, the question is, why do you have to go anywhere? In the end, we all end up at the same place, don't we? All journeys end identically. So the uniqueness of our journey is that it doesn't have to be anywhere except in ourselves. Now, what would change if you stopped this need to be someplace else, with someone else, doing something else, because what you are now you're really not content or happy with? What would change is all that energy you're putting into the wrong area. We just haven't learned how to go inside. We're always externalizing. And by the way, a lot of people think that they're on an inner journey, and it's a deception. More often than not, I see these people as merely on an emotional roller coaster. Don't confuse emotionalism with spiritualism. Radically different. I know a lot of people who are emotional wrecks, and yet they think they're spiritually evolved because they cry, or they feel, or they have empathy. These are manipulated emotions. And so get beyond the emotional. When you're just emoting, that's a conditioned response. And get out of intellectualizing. That's a defensive mechanism. Trying to figure everything out, staying at a distance from everything. So if you detach yourself from the emotional and the intellectual, what do you got left? What's left? The body, yes, and the spirit. And the spirit is your intuition. Comes through and it guides us, teaches us. We just have to allow it. We have to believe it. We have to connect with it. It won't deceive us, but the mind will. Your conditioning will always deceive you. And your emotions will sink you. Think of how many times those emotions just been that demon that jumped on your back all at the wrong time, said the wrong things, expressed itself in the wrong way, and then what are you going to do at that point? We're just overly emoting as a society. and people know how to use that. Watch the people in your lives who want to get you. They'll always say the thing that they know is going to get you to react, right? So it's like we have emotional minefields set out in front of us and someone just goes, step there, step there, step there, step there, step there, and then we react. Nothing constructive comes from that. And then what do? We react and then we go eat a hamburger or bury our face in a 5-pound gallon of ice cream, or smoke marijuana or drink alcohol or, go do something else. It's not appropriate for our good health. Some are stoned on drugs, others on their own needs. I see people even doing meditation and yoga, not because it is freeing, but because it is adaptive. They go from a very hectic and stressed life, and then they'll do meditation, because in that moment when they're meditating, they're feeling detached from their pain and blissful. Then that is meditation that is no different than cocaine or heroin or marijuana, no different than a pound of chocolate cake. It's a distraction. Now, if they use meditation as a transcendence, a way of transforming themselves, that's different. Otherwise, just natural escape. I've seen it. I've seen people, I actually filmed people going into a yoga studio in mid-afternoon, doing their yoga, being right into it, going outside and smoking a cigarette, getting on the cell phone, getting anxious again and yelling. I stood out there for 2 hours filming people coming out. You'd never known that 5 minutes before they were in a, yes, let us breathe in. The pranayama, oh, how good I feel. And then 5 minutes later, I'm busy, tell him to call back. We're always playing these games, right? Is your life a set of emotions? Joy, fear, tragedy, comedy, loneliness, insecurity, desire, pain, romanticism, impotency, detachment, aching needs, abandonment. They don't come alone, they come in sets. And generally we go through whatever we can feel, because then the only way we feel alive is by feeling one of these emotions. Well, the only way you feel alive is to feel some emotion, and you're going to draw that energy to you. You'll be the drama queen. Y'all know what that means? You'll be the tragedy queen, where everything is where they look like a heroine. Or you'll be the needy queen, or you'll be someone, man or woman, you'll be looking at other people to be there as a sounding board or a connection for what you need, and you'll emote. And then one day, you're on an automatic. You don't even have to try anymore. Someone can actually predict what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, what you're going to feel. That's how easy it is to see this coming. And you see it even in people in your own lives. You know what they're going to say and how they're going to respond even before you talk. That means you're just a set of emotions. Seeking can be a distraction from our own dramas. I know a lot of people who run around the world seeking. We've all heard of the seekers. What are they seeking? What is it out there we're seeking? We're going to go run off in India and meditate with a guru? That's going to attach us to something? Our journey is here. I don't care where you take yourself, you're still with yourself. So if you're insecure here, you're going to be insecure wherever you go. And whoever you're with, you're still going to be the same person. We like to think that we're going to be different with a different person, but we're not. We'd have to transform ourselves to be different. So we do a lot of running, a lot of hiding, a lot of needful bonding, which in the end is superficial, just so that we can feel better about ourselves. And then we start dreaming. If only I had what? A better job, a different place to live, a different person to be with, then I'd feel better about myself. But it doesn't work. It never works. I've never seen anyone who was better because what they needed, they felt they combined with. Because if you're damaged merchandise now, you're going to be equally damaged no matter where you're at or who you're with or what circumstances you're in. You'll just learn how to distract it or hide it for a while. In time, it all reveals itself. How many times in life have you bought into someone's illusion because you wanted to be someone? You wanted to be in a way that you needed. You wanted the romance and they gave it to you. You wanted the good sex, they gave it to you. You wanted hearing the words of how important you were and they said it. And then one day you started seeing what they really were, the rest of them. And the rest of it wasn't this great person, romantic, nice, kind, thoughtful. It was manipulative, using, betrayal. Now you're stuck because your needs are clouding your judgment because you've already expressed your emotions, and now your emotions are out there dangling as life support systems, and another person is supposed to be giving you what you need in return. Did it ever occur to you that responsibility for yourself starts with just you? We actually need to make it an alone process. I would rather see a person take the time and the pain and the experience to accept who they are with their weaknesses and strengths completely revealed, and then focus on detaching from them by transcending them, by understanding them and surrendering them. So when they do go someplace, they're going as a whole person with a fresh mind and not out of need. When they're with someone, and in the end, the only person you should be with is a person you don't need to be with. Because the moment you need that person, you've already created an imbalance. Sooner or later, that person's not going to be able to give you what you need, and then that creates the separation. Better to have a whole sense of self, so wherever you go, you can then realize the significance of accepting people from a different perspective, one of a holistic model instead of a fragmented model. Wouldn't it be nice to have people in your life who don't need you in your life, but desire you, appreciate you, and look at you as a special gift from life? No arguments, none of the anger. That all comes from someplace because it's so common, we assume it's normal. It's not normal. It's abnormal behavior that we have made normal in perception. Why do we make everything so complicated? Simple. Because we have confused the complexity of our own emotional problems with the simplicity of detaching from those emotional problems. In most cases, all that it takes to change how we feel about anything is to put it in a different perspective. You complain all day long about being hungry, and all you can think about is food, 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 and then everybody around you says, yeah, she's hungry, eat, 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 and you're overweight. Then I take you out to Africa, I put you in a village where people haven't eaten in a month, and they share a bowl of rice, and suddenly you think, God, I guess I wasn't hungry. I guess I didn't need to eat all that food. You have to change your perception to change your perspective, to change your conditioning. And that's a test you must give yourself. Do you have the courage to deconstruct all these illusions by which you live about what you need or who you are, how you should look and how you should be around other people, how you should be affected? Only when you can take that step, and it's a courageous step, to challenge yourself, to test yourself, and learn by whether you pass or fail the test. It's okay to fail test as long as we've learned why we failed and then reapply that to the next lesson of life. Then our failure of one test becomes the lesson that we must take. And then one day you don't fail that test because you've learned from it. And then one day you realize almost all of our pain is an illusion. Almost all of our fears are an illusion. Almost all of our prejudices are illusions. Almost all of our limitations are illusions. And you simply no longer accept them. And when you no longer accept the illusion, then reality is there. And you connect with reality. And in that moment, you're complete. You don't have to be anything. You don't have to be anywhere. You don't have to do anything to be appreciating how unique and wonderful and beautiful you are as a human being. Whether or not someone else can see it and feel it and respect it is really of no significance. the significance is you have to believe it, because you're the only one who has to live with you. In the end, life is a uniquely individual experience to which we are simply surrounded by others who may or may not appreciate the uniqueness of who we are and connect with us at the best we can be. Because if people connect with you at the worst you are, then both of you will suffer. And it's really, in the end, isn't it selfish to allow people to connect with us at our worst? And yet we seek out people when we feel the worst, when we feel our loneliest, when we feel our most hurt, when we feel our most victimized, when we feel helpless. That's when we seek people. And then all we have to do is tell them our story. And our life is open to our story. And we've overread our story. We've over-memorized our story. It's on automatic, and we just keep showing people our story. We try to get them to buy into the illusion that we should be in their life on some level because we are essential to each other. People are not essential in sharing each other's pain. We have to surrender this idea if we want to be responsible for all of our actions. And in the end, when you are fully responsible, fully conscious, fully present, fully evolving, fully aware of everything you can choose, and you are, then why would you choose anything that at any level lessens the quality of your existence? So in the end, it's all about free choice and the consciousness that allows free choice. Think about the people who smoke and get sick, drink and get sick, overeat and get sick, are angry and sick. Think of the people who don't appreciate what they have, are always coveting others' possessions, envious and jealous of other people's happiness and success, or their perception of that. And there are a lot of people like that. Now, do you think that having anything like those other people would make them feel better about themselves? I don't think so. I believe that we should appreciate that just being alive today should be enough of a gift to start our journey. Where we're going to go, how we're going to get there, it's all based upon being open enough to who you can be when you're at your best. And think of yourself at your best, at your strongest, your happiest, your most effervescent, at your most dynamic and passionate. That's where you should lead your energy, and that's where your visions of self should come from, because you're then showing what's real. What's real is you're capable of all of that growth. Then what are the tools you need to get there? Patience, determination, discipline, respect, compassion, yes, and belief. But whose belief? Has to be your belief. And where do you have to place it? In this moment. Because if you're in this moment with all that, then there's no limitation. And in the end, then you create the power. And where in your life you've given the power to everyone else, now you're taking back the power.